Greetings, everyone. Welcome back. It's been a little while. I really missed you all at YouTube, and I want to thank you for all the new subscribers. I want to thank you for supporting me. There's a really big difference between alternative medicine and lumping us all in the flaky bakey category of just slapping on essential oil on a Band-Aid and simply only knowing homeopathy, which is very powerful, by the way, and devoting one's entire resources and vocational interest in life to medical research. So I hope that by coming on board on YouTube that I'm giving you something that you say, hey, this is valuable to me. These are providing me with insights which aren't commonly found. Now, for those of you that maybe have not seen my videos more recently and you're saying, what in the hell happened to her? My child passed. He transitioned, he died October 29th, a little over 9 months ago. And I'm in grief. My face is swollen. I went through a long period of clearing my throat and not feeling well because I'm missing him quite a bit. So I'm doing my best, and I've still got my face on here, even though I don't, feel like I look the best, but here I am. I uploaded an image about SARS because there are plenty of days that I'm feeling a lot of feelings. I won't even label them. Walking on the trail out in nature and seeing people with a cotton or a cloth mask on out in nature while they're hiking uphill. People want to be good. They want to do the right thing. They want to protect others. They want to follow the instructions. They want to be the good dog. They want to move my chair up here. They want to do the right thing. None of us want to be doing the wrong thing, taking a chance. Everyone's got a good amount of fear. We hear about the numbers going up and the numbers over here, and now it's affecting this group, and asymptomatic people, or no, that's not true. And, just today I was at Whole Foods in Duluth, and I had formerly watched in April and May people be downright chastised for bringing in their own bag, which is what we have done in natural food or health food stores since I've been shopping in them in 1982 at the Bread of Life in Campbell, California. So I said, so now the governor must say it's okay that we can bring in our own bag to take our stuff home. It's not too germy. Yep, now it's okay. I said, okay, so the governor must have kind of flip-flopped on that, and we're just all sort of at the behest of the CDC and the WHO and all the other three-letter agencies that seem to be the powers that be, that seem to be the commanders about what's going on. So if we roll back history about 2,500 years, and we saw that we were healing each other and that we did not have the significant infection levels of today. Now, some people would start to argue and disagree with me because they're going to be thinking about the industrial age. They're going to be thinking about the, quote, dark ages. But I'm saying let's go back to the Fertile Crescent in Sumer before Christianity overtook vis-a-vis the Hittites. The women who were always the healers, who healed more so simple issues that were not amalgamated. When you go to the dentist and you get amalgams put in, they're not just mercury. They're a combination of metals like copper and mercury and other compounds and fixatives that cause this type of a dental filling to stay in your mouth, hopefully, ideally, for a very long time. Then it starts to pull away from the tooth surface and it starts to become a very bacteria type, like a bacteria magnet. So bacteria starts to form around the areas where the filling is pulling away from the tooth. And that bacteria can go all the way down into your bloodstream very easily vis-a-vis through the mouth, straight down, just like root canals it's almost like a PICC line down to your heart. Okay. I picked speaking about SARS because first what we heard is that there's a coronavirus. And when people started speaking out and saying, well, we've been immunizing the canine companions since 1971, we know there's 14 identified strains of coronavirus, just like we knew about Zika in the 1950s. And then all of a sudden, we started to get a more sophisticated viral code. We were told it was SARS-CoV-2. So therefore, it was not just severe acute respiratory syndrome, but it was also severe acute respiratory syndrome, novel coronavirus, meaning one that had never been seen, mapped out, or dealt with before. Allegedly a more particularly virulent virus. The majority of people who are seeking treatment and unbeknownst to them what to do with their own bodies, because of the historical fact that I just shared with you, that once Christianity moved in to the Fertile Crescent, women were no longer allowed to be the healers. They were no longer allowed, under fear and murder, to be able to grow and procure herbs and spices necessary for healing. So what you have today, and I want you to pay attention, I want to take a couple of notes because you're going to want to share this with other people. If I take a walk, as I did with my daughter today, up and down, 4th Street in Duluth, I say, what is it that you would eat here? Because while I've pointed out comfrey and plantain, we've actually taken some nibbles off some baby pine needles on the pine trees, the little baby needles. You can eat those. You can make a tea out of them. They contain pine needle sap, and pine needle pollen contain a lot of testosterone. And women as well as men need that. But could you really sustain yourself, with caloric density, a sufficient amount of caloric, savvy, good nutrition by what's outside today? Not really. So to further enable you to be helpless, we have ornamental lawns, which are no damn good for eating. We have ornamental trees that don't produce fruit, not all over the place. Children should be able to go into any yard and reach up and get a peach, a pear, an apricot, depending on what grows in the particular area. But we don't have that ability today. And that's very sad. So I turn to people, I'm going to kind of interject this here. I turn to people like Paul Stamets. I bought many of his supplements recently when I had the stimulus check that came out that many of you got as well. And I thought to myself, I'm going to use that extra, if you will, very wisely. And I bought some of the Myco because I believe, based on what I'm seeing, based on watching the movie Fungi, that was gifted to me by my sister Kim, whose channel is Pure Luminosity. I encourage you strongly to go over and subscribe to her as well. Let's support everyone. Whether we don't like a few things, or we are religious and we're not, and we're political and we're not, we're this and we're not, try to find the nuggets within that are going to work for you. And not just work for you, but they're going to work for the good of the whole. Okay? So I went and I bought some fungi, some mushrooms, some mycelium that had lion's mane, cordyceps, reishi, so that's Ganoderma is another name, chaga, and I've got all kinds of lovely fungi supplements in powder form that I can add to my food. I can add to a warm cereal in the morning. I can add it to a smoothie. I can add it to a tea, or I make a type of a coffee that's not really made out of acidic coffee, but it's using a product called Ticino. And I've got others. I've got chais that are, instant, but they're not the ones that have all the dairy and the yucky stuff. A new one that I'm trying right now that I really like a lot is by Blue Lotus. So I can put that in hot water right out of my tea kettle that I got for $10 at Walmart. My filtered water's in there. Put my raw honey in there. And I can also stir in a little bit of those powders in there to really uplift myself, to heal myself. Well, what do the mushrooms do? Well, the mushrooms are the connectors of the world. The mushrooms all have specific properties. Lion's mane, the chaparrals, the bellas, the chaga, the cordyceps. Cordyceps is something that way before my child was born, it'd be 25 years ago this month here next week, my child was born. Zawa Pringle. Love you dearly. I'm so sorry. 9 going on 10 months ago, I walked in and found him dead in his room. And I'm still here. How could I sit down and not put my face back on here and not come back and share with you some of these insights that I really want you to get? SARS is severe acute respiratory syndrome. Any syndrome is kind of like, have you heard of one of your friends or maybe you yourself were diagnosed with IBD, irritable bowel disorder? Okay. Syndromes and disorders, which are the new mechanized language, are a collection of symptoms. So in other words, anything that has to do with you're not breathing so good, you're coughing, you've got phlegm, you're sneezing, you can name some more. What is causing people not to breathe very well? How do we know? As I answered one of my answers on Quora just the other day, Quora.com, Karen Pringle. There are underlying medical conditions in every one of our people right now. That include a subpar temperature, meaning it's below normal, too high of a temperature, it's above the ideal operating condition of the body, the vessel, the vehicle. There's too much congestion in the lungs. The lifestyle is too sedentary, too much sitting and not getting out into nature. When I go out into nature, which I did walking for 2+ hours today, I am breathing in the humidity and the respiration, and those habits that I form. I wanted to lay on the floor. I want to cry and roll up into a ball and just eat a bunch of jelly donuts, really, and say, woe is me. Why did I lose my child? Why did this happen to me? How come I am not going to be a grandmother like I talked about so many times with he and Christina? Why? But will it do me any good? Not really. So I have done my best to give you a model worthy of imitation, not a perfect model, not a worship me model, not I'm doing it the right way and there's no other way to do it model. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when it happens to you, if it happens to you, you're going to have to pull back up. You're going to have to find a reason to get up after 24 years of birthing and then enjoying being a mother, having it be your absolute everything in life. Everything else I did was my research, natural healing. Number 1 was mama. Number 2 was my medicine. Shaman and medicine woman. If we had more shamans and medicine people today that stood up and said, you will not be diagnosing people under the guise of a syndrome. You will not be requiring all of our people to wear a mask under the guise of a syndrome. What we needed to do was to procure health. And when we have health care that doesn't address prevention and wellness, but simply prescribes, cuts it out surgically, and kills it out of you with chemical therapy, and is constantly diagnosing, and has no rhyme or reason for understanding your vital signs, why do you go into the triage when you go to urgent care or the emergency room and someone takes your vital signs, your temperature, your oxygen, your blood pressure, if they don't know what to do with them? So if you are starving for air because your body is anemic. And the serum blood testing that you are receiving through the clinics, your primary care physicians, your hospitals, test your serum blood to find out what your iron levels are. Let me just turn this for just a second here. Excuse me just a minute. Okay. Then that is singularly not the one and only way to find out what your iron levels are. This is why I offer the hair tissue mineral analysis in a lab that's been around for 40 years, owned by a PhD who writes scientifically, empirically correct articles, and talks about how the hair tissue provides a 3-month window that gives us the ability to check on a real basis your chromium, your copper, your zinc, your iron, your calcium, your magnesium, and not just the trace elements, which are like the spark plugs of the body, but also the toxic elements, arsenic, lead, cadmium, mercury, bismuth. For the ladies and the women that have been dyeing their hair, your bismuth levels may be elevated. Okay? So what I'd like you to do is consider that SARS-CoV-2, now shortened into the symptoms of which are called COVID-19, is being diagnosed as a syndrome. The testing has shown us over and over that the efficacy is not really there. The numbers and the fear-mongering that's going on the television and the requirements and the mandates to wear a mask are dehumanizing. If we're in fact going to take care of our people, then we begin by healing our people. We start from the gut. We extend by no longer feeding them starches, including unhoused and others who are not accessing financial resources, who are not plugged into the matrix or are assisted by someone, mommies and daddies and aunts and uncles and financiers that are assisting them. Good for you if you are. I'm not putting you down. But there's a lot of folks out there that don't have access to money. They don't have access to shelter. Therefore, they do not have access to real whole foods. Okay? And once we have access to that and we start to push back at the food drugs, push back on the cholesterol, the blood pressure, the acid reflux, you've got a heart problem, we've got to do the EKG and the stress test and the blankety 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 blank. When you don't have iron circulating in your body, your heart begins to enlarge. That's not rocket science. When you have a deficient thyroid, you will start to create pockets of fluid retention, and precisely, you bet, they're going to be around the heart. Okay? So I'm going to jump off because it looks like my client may have gotten her internet back on and I could hear the buzzing, and I didn't want to just cut you off in a split second. But I thank you. I thank you for subscribing to my channel, for sharing my videos. I want you to think very carefully, the final message. If it's SARS-CoV-2, if it's a syndrome, and the syndrome can be any of these symptoms that we hear about, insufficient zinc, insufficient smell, dry cough, sneezing, slightly elevated temperature, what are we doing? We've heard the stories about the people needing the ventilators shoved down their throat, and then we heard the stories, as I warned, that a ventilator is not going to be the ticket. We've seen Dr. Brownstein's office cure 107 people with confirmed cases of COVID-19 through using a nebulizer with iodine and food-grade hydrogen peroxide, along with supplements that I've been using for 36 years with my clients successfully. I think there's something a little more to it. And I think you might too. Thank you for joining me, guys. I'm going to say so long.